Hello and welcome to this Power Automate in a Day Lab 4 exercise. In this exercise, you learn a little bit more about expression, variable, arrays, how to create HTML table, and how to customize HTML in Power Automate. Now that you have uploaded your office.xml file to your OneDrive for Business, let's take a look at this file. So we have a table with two columns, city and capacity. For each city, we have a list of cities and a country. And capacity, we have the number of seats available in this office. So what we want to do now is we want to create a Power Automate flow that will loop through this list of offices and will calculate the total capacity and the biggest office. So let's create a schedule flow, which is a flow that will run once a week and that will send a report to the management about this office capacity. Okay. Let's say this flow must run every week. So you can select the day. So let's say I want this flow to run only on Monday at 7 a.m. Okay, from now. Let's create the flow. As you will see, we have a recurrence trigger that we can customize. And now let's add an action which consists of defining a variable. So we have a variable connector, and in this variable connector, we have a bunch of action. One of them is initialize variable. So initialize variable allows us to define and initialize a variable that we can use across the flow. So let's name this variable var. Var is our naming convention for variable. Total capacity, which will be a integer. Value by default is 0. And the action will be initialized with this name. So we keep the default action name. We just add additional information. It's just a convention. So now let's define, or let's connect to Excel Online. Let's connect to a table. Let's use the Excel Online connector. And let's select the list row present in the table action that we will connect to the OneDrive for Business location. That's where your office.xml file is. Document library is OneDrive. And file is office.xlsx. Did I say XML? XLSX. Table 1. Save. And now we will loop through this table. Let's use the apply to each. There are other more efficient way to achieve our goal, but okay. Let's use an apply to each, and the apply to each expect a JSON array, which will be provided by, let's use dynamic value, by the list row present in a table. That is connected to the Excel Offices document. So the apply to each will go through each item, and this will be the opportunity to sum up, to to sum up, to increment our variable. So let's use the increment variable action in this apply to each. And we will increment the var total capacity variable that we have defined before with the value of the capacity column, right? Which by default is a string in the Excel table, right? So if you use dynamic value here, unfortunately, if you point to the apply to each, you will only see current item. I want to be more specific. I want to point to the capacity. So you need to go to a function, and in the function, you can point to the capacity directly, right? Which actually means that you will generate an item parentheses bracket capacity expression. You will take the current item from the loop, and from the item you will grab the capacity attribute. Okay, add, save. Let's test our flow. Okay, so we got an error in the apply to each. And the reason is that the capacity that we grab from the Excel document is actually a string. And we try to increment a number. And this does not work in Power Automate. Okay, as you can see. So we will have to convert our capacity string, which looks like a number, but it's actually a string in the Excel table, into a number, into an integer. Right? Let's edit the flow, and indeed, when we increment here, instead of putting capacity, we'll have to rely on a function that will convert. And this function will convert the capacity item, so we can grab this from a function, but we need to enclose this into a function called int. Int. That's a conversion function that is in Power Automate. There are many other functions that you need to be aware of. And to know more, yeah, let's test this. I will point to the documentation. We will learn other functions along the way, but now it looks fine. Okay, it does the increment. Of course, we need to go to the loop, in the loop, and see step by step what we get, you see. Normally, we should see output, but if we click on the row output, then we see the content. So we see input, and we should see output, but we don't. It's a small bug in Power Automate. Okay, so basically we have 250, 88, etc. So this is the 250. Right? This is the output. So if I switch to the next item, I see the output here. Right? So that's fine. Etc. etc. You can go to the last one, which is 11. Oops, 11. 11, and the output in 11 is 1557. That's the sum of all the seats in the Office XLSX document. Okay, fine. Okay, int, parentheses, and what we transform. To know more about all this function, you can go to the following site. If you type automate function in Google, for instance, then you will see this reference guide for expression function that I recommend you to bookmark. It's an important site. And there are many, many functions organized by categories. You see, one of them is string collection. We have conversion function, right? So here you can see that we have the int function, which is described there, and transform a string into a number. There are many other functions. So now what we can do, let's edit our flow. Yeah, the biggest one is actually Toronto. So let's try to find out the biggest office. And to do this, let's define two additional variables. One will keep the value of the biggest capacity. Let's name it var biggest capacity. It should be a number, an integer. It's a good practice to initialize to 0, even though I think that by default it's going to be initialized to 0. Let's rename our action. And let's do the same thing. We can copy and paste, or we can define a new variable. So let's define a variable for keeping the name of the biggest city, right? Biggest city, and biggest city will become, var. Biggest city, it was a copy and paste, so let's change this. Biggest city is becoming a string. Okay, so it's this column, the value of this column. Now, we will check in the loop if we will try to find out the biggest one. So for each item, we're going to check if the value of the item is bigger than a reference value. So we're going to use this variable as a reference value. So let's add a condition in the loop after, or well, does not matter, after the increment. And let's check the capacity. Let's compare the capacity against the value of the existing biggest city. So let's compare. The dynamic content of the capacity. Don't forget to convert that to an integer. Okay, add the expression. If the value of the new one is greater than the value of the existing one, which is the reference one, which is the variable, biggest capacity. If the new one is bigger, then the new one will become the reference. So let's store the value by using the set variable action, the value of the new one into the reference variable, which is var biggest capacity, right? So let's store biggest capacity, convert, so int into var biggest capacity, right? Let's name this action. So this naming convention make the maintenance of your flow much easier. This is very important. And also, let's store the name of the new city as the reference as well in var biggest city. So let's grab that directly from this row. So that's this one is easy. Okay, so let's save it and test. Well, we can test and save at the same time. Yeah, by the way, this is what our flow looks like. You can zoom in, zoom out. Let's test the flow. No reaction. It's a bit slow. Let's test again. Oh, there is an error somewhere, something wrong. Probably that I forgot to cast something. Yes, I need to cast this. So casting means transforming. So capacity. I thought I did it, but okay, anyway. So capacity, and don't forget the int. Or I think I did it, but I forget to click on the add button. Okay. Int. So the int can also be retrieved from here. So all the functions are described here. Int, if you want, if you like. That's the same. Okay, add, now test. And it works. It works. I can iterate through each item, and I see that the biggest one is normally Toronto. I don't see the output here, but here it's Toronto. Yes. And I can keep a trace of the biggest one after the loop. So I will put a compose. So the compose action is an action where you can store almost whatever you want, object, complex thing, anything. But here I'm going to just store the value of our biggest city in this compose. so that I don't have to go to the trace to find out which one is the biggest one. Okay. If I check compose, no, I see it's Toronto. Nice. Okay, now what I want to do is, of course, I would like to send a report to the management. So I'm going to use the Office 365 Outlook connector to send an email action. I'm going to use the V2. I always check if there's no newest version. No, it's still V2. Never know. Everything change every day. So let's send that to, well, to yourself. And the subject should be something like office capacity. Let's keep it simple. And the body will be something quite simple, like the biggest office is, and its capacity is, and the total capacity is. Right. So let's grab the corresponding variable. Okay, total capacity is total capacity. Fine. Let's save this. Test. Test will save. Okay, so now let's check our mailbox. And I should have received a mail. Yes. Okay, so that's fine. That's correct. Right. So now we can do better. And just for information, the email. So if you want, you can also put some HTML instruction in the email because you can switch your email to HTML. But here, let's say that we want to display the list of offices down below, right? And to do this, I have to use the create HTML action. So there's an action, very interesting action, that allows us to create an HTML table from an array of value. And here the array of value will be the list of offices coming from the Excel document. So let's grab that from the array provided by this action. This row present in a table, dynamic value. We grab body value. And what is interesting is that I can, I've different columns here, different option here. Like I can specify the way I will display the column. So if by default I select automatic, then you will see what happened. So here down below in the mail, I can put the output of create HTML table here. So some HTML will be inserted over there. So it's HTML behind the curtain. Okay, so let's rename our action accordingly. List of offices. Okay, so now if I try this, if I test this, let's run flow. I should get an email that looks like by the way, just to illustrate that the list row return an array. Where is the array? The array is here. It's a value. So all arrays in Automate looks like something that starts with value bracket. Okay, they're all the same. They have different value, of course. Now let's take a look at the email. So the email is this. So this is not what we want. Of course, we see the city, we see the capacity, but we have some internal columns that we would like to get rid of. And to get rid of this column, we have to switch automatic to custom. And we have to specify a formula that will provide a column. So here, let's say the header will be city, but the expression, fx, you need to provide the expression logic. So what I want is, I want to just return the city. So item, parentheses, bracket city, right? That's the logic that you have to specify here. So it's quite very convenient. And let's say for capacity header, the logic will be, I want just capacity. I don't have to transform because the string is good enough here. Okay. So if I do this, if I run the same flow, now it should be better. Yeah, it's much better. It's better, but we should be able to customize that to make it even better, right? So sky is the limit. Sky is the limit because in the email, you can put HTML instruction if you want. So you can customize the email as you want. right? So it's very flexible, but we are going to do that step by step. And just to illustrate how to customize the email, right? So let's change that a little bit. List of offices, and I will underline this. Okay, underline here. Okay, so what I would like to do now is I would like the table of offices to look like a table. So if you take a look at the create HTML table output here, behind the curtain it's HTML. So you have table, etc. So we can customize this. Like, let's put a border, right? A border around the table, just to illustrate that we can change the code. And to change this, you see, you can go there, you see, so this is output of create HTML table. So we can customize this. fx, and we can say, just to show you that I'm going to replace. So there is a function replace. In the string function, there is replace. Okay, replace. So we are going to use this function here to change the code, the HTML code, with a new code. And what we are going to do is we will specify table border equal 1 in the HTML table code. So replace, we will replace what? The existing code. That means the code returned by the create HTML action, right? So let's grab this action, output, the output of this action. It's not the action, it's the output of the action, right? So replace this with, so we will replace table instruction with table border equal 1 or something like this. So table we will replace with table border equal 1, double quote around 1, right? Okay, so this is what we're gonna put in our email. Now, if we test this, let's use automatic, it's faster. Save and test. Then normally you should see, let's test, the table in the mail, right? So we see the border. But okay, that's cool, indeed, but we would like to do more. What we would like to do is to add an additional column, size, where we specify big if the capacity is bigger than 200 and small if it's smaller. To do this, we have to customize the create HTML table. Okay. Let's add a new column called size, header size. And now the expression will be something like this. So we will use the if function, that if check if something is true or false. In our case, we're going to check if the capacity is bigger than 200, right? So this is the if syntax. Okay. And we also need another function, which is greater. Greater, check if a value is greater than another one. So greater here. Okay, so let's use this to generate the logic of this custom column. So if greater parentheses, and here we'll have to put the value of the capacity. So just to make it simple, I will replace that. Let's compare that to 200. So I will put the value here. So well, you see the star here will be the value of the capacity. So I will compare the star, so the value against 200. If it's greater, then I will say big. Otherwise, I will display small, right? And now, okay. So now let's replace the star with the value of capacity. Of course, I need to convert. So to convert the capacity to an integer. So if I say 5, for instance, 5 against 200, so syntax looks fine. Okay, so now let's grab the capacity from this. Okay, so item. And to make it run, I need to transform that into an int. So int, oops, removed parentheses here, capacity. We've done that before. Okay, so this is the logic of this formula, right? So if the capacity is greater than 200, then display big, otherwise display small. Fine. Let's add this expression there. And now if I test my new code, I should see this new column. Finger cross. And yes. Okay, so that worked. Cool. Now we can do even better. And what we would like to do is, if the size is big, then we would like the value of capacity to become red, to display in red, otherwise in green. So let's customize capacity here by putting some HTML code, like a div, style equal color red. Okay. And of course, we need to close the div here. So if we do that, let's put red. That will try to adapt depending on the capacity, but let's try with red first. So if we do this, then what we will see is something a little bit weird. Indeed, we get this. Now we see the HTML code in the mail, which is not what we want, of course. And the reason is that the encoding HTML, we have some encoded value in the HTML, so we need to decode that. So if I take a look at the HTML, you see the less than should be less than and not ampersand LT. Same for the greater than, same for the quote. You see, greater than and quote. So basically what I should get is this. So instead of less than, I should have the real less than character. Same for greater, same for quote. So I need to replace, I will have to replace each of these encoded value in my HTML table. And I can do that by using a function called replace. Okay. So here I have to add a new replace. So replace of the replace. So when I find the following string, ampersand LT semicolon, I have to replace it with less than. Okay, this is my first replace. I need to do another replace, to add another replace. So replace return the value, right? So another replace for the greater than ampersand GT semicolon should be replaced with greater. Oops, some issue with my keyboard. Greater. One quote. Close parentheses. And I have to do another one for quote. So replace parentheses, quote, ampersand, quote, and it's a double quote, like this. Like this, quote. Sorry for the cursor, I move it so in front of you. So, okay, so now let's try this. Save and test. Finger cross. And let's see my new report. And it worked. Okay, so that's cool. It worked with red, so now I need to update my code, my function. So this is fine. I need to update my function in the create HTML table to check if the value is greater than 200. If that's the case, I can put color red, otherwise I can put color green. Okay, so let's remove this div code here. Okay, we have to be careful here. Yeah, so let's remove this. So if greater $200, now let's put the item capacity. Let's transform that to an int parentheses. Okay. Right. So if it's greater, then you need to output diff style color red, otherwise diff style color green. Like this. Okay, otherwise the same stuff but with green. Green. Okay. Looks okay to me. We can increase the size of the window here. It looks fine to me. Okay, let's add, oh, there's some typo somewhere. Let's ask Copilot to help. Maybe, what's wrong here? Items correct, 200. Like this, parentheses, no. No, I don't think so. Yeah, wrong parentheses. Anyway, I will ask Copilot for help. Single quote here, at least that. At least single quote, that for sure. But something, Copilot, single quote was correct. Okay, Copilot fix it. Okay, cool. I have a new friend here. Yes. The parentheses was wrong. One missing parentheses. Okay. Okay, add, then it should be fine. We can test it. I trust Copilot. Okay. Finger cross. And it worked. Okay. So very cool. And thank you, Copilot.